Welcome to another episode of Between Two Dots, brought to you by Intention Media, where we interview guests and try to discover how they are living intentional lives. On today's podcast, I'm joined by my dear friend, Jan Eden. For over 25 years working in an abundance of exceptional clients, Jan is privileged in being instrumental in supporting and executing alongside each client in achieving notable results. Jan is an expert in identifying and transforming executive and professional uniqueness into revenue-generating intellectual property and expertise. Since the mid-90s, Jan has been studying and speaking out about global disruption and change. The results of her studies realize the need to develop a 21st century executive mindset. Jan's greatest strength is her ability to listen to clients and into the path forward through clear pictures in her mind's eye. This is a great conversation learning about Jan's life, her story, her mindset, and the way she views the world. It was my pleasure and privilege to interview Jan Eden. Jan, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. Where are you taking the call from?
From my office, my home office on Memorial Drive in Kensington.
Amazing. And maybe that's a good segue, but has that always been home? Or where does your story start?
Well, I was born in Toronto, and I was born on Yorkville Avenue in Toronto, believe it or not. There was a hospital there, the Mount Sinai Hospital. And then, of course, they moved. If you know anything about Toronto, it's now on University Avenue. So I moved here in the mid-70s. And so I've seen a lot of change in the city, kind of living in it and not sort of stepping out and seeing opportunities that were there. But I've been here ever since. I have no desire to go back to Toronto. I fell in love with Calgary the first day I arrived here. So, I feel like I lived. If there's reincarnation, I think I lived here before because it was coming home. I felt like I was coming home.
Yeah. So I guess growing up in Toronto, what was that like? And did you have any siblings growing up?
Yeah, I had a younger brother and sister. We came from, a very modest family, and our neighborhood, everybody was in the same kind of income bracket. So there was no, we were all equal in what we could afford, not afford. And we grew up in a really nice neighborhood. And Toronto, I love Toronto. Like when I lived there, it was, a very fabulous city. It still is. But it's funny how you move. I think a lot of people in Calgary have moved from somewhere else. And, it's you forget where you came from very quickly. You get so immersed in Calgary and what's happening here. There's a vibe here. There's like a vortex of energy that isn't anywhere else that I've ever lived.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. What did your parents do for work then, growing up?
Well, my father was a diesel mechanic, and he was captured in the Second World War in Dieppe. And so we didn't realize when we were a family that he had serious PTSD. And so we didn't really have a lot of fun. There wasn't, he was mostly depressed, trying to, forget the past. But as children, we had no clue. We just grew up in a family where my mother stayed home. She was a stay-at-home mom. And we left, when we left home, we never came back. And all three of us have done really well in our careers. But there was a stigma when we know now about PTSD. but then, it wasn't really revealed what people went through from serious trauma.
Yeah. Did he ever talk about the war at all, or is it?
Yeah, he talked about it all the time. So he was fortunate. Most people coming back from anything like that never talk. They keep it very quiet because it's so dreadful. But that was his healing. I think that's how he healed, was to talk about it. And people were fascinated with the stories. And he wrote a book in his 80s, Destined to Survive. And like he never had any education because he came from a farm. He was the oldest boy in the farm, and so he had to deliver the milk. So he always felt that he wasn't worthy of writing a book because he didn't have education. So my sister supported him in writing the book, and I'm so glad that he did finally. But he became famous in his 80s, um, which, who would ever have dreamt that would happen? But he would go to schools in Ontario, public schools, and tell his story to make sure young people understood history and what the Canadians did and others to fight for freedom. And we still need that today because we're forgetting what the previous generations have done to, give us what we have today.
Yeah, 100%. Unfortunately, freedom and to be saved is not a free ticket, if you will. There's people that have to pay the cost of that, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's really unfortunate. I think we're going backwards. We're not really moving forward. Technology is moving forward, but we're regressing as a species with what's happening in the world. We're repeating insanity that was already repeated, and it just seems weird that we're so smart. We have so much education, so many books on so many things, but I think we're in the era of ignorance.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of interesting because, as you mentioned, technology is marching forward. But in this world of digitization and artificial intelligence and all the things, I feel that people are craving that human connection. And that's something that you've always been good at as it relates to understanding and participating in those like non-scalable activities, like actually getting people together and to convene and that sort of stuff. It's not necessarily something that you can grow exponentially like you could a technology company or anything like that. But I feel like there's a lot of value there in today's day and age.
Yeah, I think community is really important. I think generosity, the value of generosity, which we don't see as a value per se, is really relevant. And it comes in different forms, generosity. I think we're all generous in some level, but it's a consciousness of generosity. How can I support? How can I help? And it becomes, we take care of our families that way. We're always looking out for our children, but extending it to the community. And I think if we all thought that way globally, we wouldn't be in the mess we're in. Instead of being self-serving, we're more concerned about our fellow man and, what contribution do I have to their success?
Yeah. So just stepping back into your story, like so you grew up in Toronto and then you moved to Calgary. What brought you to Calgary?
Well, my husband at the time, I met him in Toronto, and we had a long distance relationship. And then my lease was up in Manulife Center and downtown Toronto, and I said, "Well, what's happening? Are we going to hang out together or what?" So we decided that I should move to Calgary, and then I've been here ever since. And yeah, it was a good decision. It was tough leaving Toronto though, because I had a great life there. Um, but it's funny how you can create a new life with new people so quickly.
Yeah.
At least I've been very fortunate to do that.
Yeah. And how did you guys meet in the first place? So he was originally Calgarian. Is that the story?
No, yeah, he was a Calgarian. He was from Medicine Hat. He was a prominent lawyer in Calgary, and I was a legal secretary. Mm-hmm. And how synchronicity works is I was promoted that day at Blake Castle's in Toronto, the main law firm there. I was promoted the same day to work with the senior managing partner. And I was the worst legal secretary in the world. I never wanted to be a legal secretary, but somehow they thought I was great. But they, I don't know how I managed. But anyway, he happened to be visiting the law firm and reached out, and we had our names on our desks. And he just reached out and said, "Hey, do you want to meet up?" And I, in my naivety, I said, "Well, we don't associate with clients. It's against, the company rules." It really wasn't. I didn't know what the company rules were about that. And then he said, "Well, no, I'm a two-bit lawyer in from Calgary." So he was coming with representing someone else. He wasn't a client to the firm. So the rest is history.
Yeah.
So sometimes, the stars align, and, we don't really think that that's possible. But in that case, it was like, if I hadn't been promoted that day, I never would have met him.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because like you could kind of, especially having experiences over time, there's so many of those moments, like those tiny moments that dictate so many things down the line, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. When you look back and you see, the synchronicity and I call it connecting the dots. Like one dot connects you to all these other dots, like, a kaleidoscope of unbelievable knowing. And like even the events I do, to curate and know that it's not that person per se, but it's who they know. So you're opening up a door to a whole new avenue of opportunity. And that's how I see every person I meet. Like, we don't know who they know. And I think if we start, going beyond what we just see in front of us and respect that person is a door opener or a vortex of new, we would look at people differently and not be so blasé about what they do or what they look like. It's more, wow, we have no idea, who they may be, connected to.
100%. Yeah. So when you landed in Calgary, obviously you moved there for your relationship. And previous to that, had you spent it? You spent some time in Calgary, I presume.
No,
in terms of no, not at all.
No, well, I was in the 1 year that we were dating. I flew out several times. We went skiing and celebrated my birthday and things like that. And then after a year, it was like, what's happening here? So we made a decision. Yeah, it was time for me to come out. But one of the things why the New Calgarian event is so important to me is when I arrived, I was treated, I had the red carpet service. Everybody welcomed me. They were over the top, kind and generous, and couldn't do enough to support me. And I still feel that without them not having a criteria to pay it forward, but I just thought, wow, is this Calgary hospitality? Well, I want to pay it forward. That was kind of an agreement I made with myself way back then.
Yeah, absolutely. That's pretty cool how you could kind of draw that personal experience and into like the event that now it's been over 30 years now, right? Hosting those events. But yeah, just like what was life like when you landed in Calgary? It's probably different visiting Calgary as like a tourist, say, and then actually understanding that this is going to be your home for the foreseeable future. Like, You mentioned everyone was welcoming and generous. What else was that time like in your life?
Well, I call myself graciously bold because when I see opportunity or I want to do something. So there was an opportunity to work at the Four Seasons Hotel. We had a Four Seasons Hotel then, and it's where the Marriott is now on Ninth Avenue. And I didn't know anything about sales. And I walked in and I applied for this job as to be a sales representative for the hotel. Because in Toronto, like that was the premier hotel to go to. So I thought, I don't know what the job is, but I know I can do it. So I talked myself into getting hired. I don't know till this day, that person that hired me, either he wasn't paying attention or there wasn't enough inventory of people that could take the job. But I basically was hired and just took off. My career took off in the Four Seasons, and I had a job right away. I was living in a phenomenal experience. And when I was hired, the director of sales, who was quite a character, and I think he was just playing with me, but he said, you're going to have to do all the Joe jobs in this position. And I'm thinking filing, running for coffee, like Joe jobs when you think about Joe jobs. And I said, well, what are the Joe jobs? And he said, well, you're going to have to take, our corporate clients out for lunch 3 times a week in Trader's Dining Room. You'll have to do the newsletter, and you'll have to put on a corporate event. And I'm looking at him, and I said, oh yeah, those are serious Joe jobs, but I think I can handle them. And I was like so excited inside, but I couldn't show him because I was just playing with him because he was being very sarcastic. And so I was there for 7 years. And I learned so much from Isidore Sharp, the owner of Four Seasons. And my values are Four Seasons values. And number 1 is do everything first class. Number 2, the employees are the preferred customers, and exceed expectations. Those are the values at the time. So I incorporated those into my career from that moment on.
Amazing. Yeah. There's something to be said about spending time in hospitality and just really understanding how to provide that curated experience. I know that we had the great fortune of having one of our team members in our business who's since moved on, but he brought like years of that high level hospitality experience. And it goes a long way in any business.
Oh yeah, how you treat people. And I think what I loved about Four Seasons is they did live them, like they treated their staff. They stayed there for their entire career, because they were treated, like they were important, because without them, and I think just saying that's what companies are missing. They're expendable. They don't see the value of the people, but it's the people that make them rich. And they only look at, the transactional side of business, and they don't see the transformational side. And if they paid more attention to the value the people are bringing and reward them for that, they'd be way more successful.
Yeah, 100%. And there's that hidden cost as it relates to like the quiet quitting and, low morale and training and switching and all that stuff, right?
Yeah, investment in people. It's not even like they have all these values that mean nothing. They have them on the wall, no one's living them. The only value you can live is respect, because respect you can measure. And that, I've worked with so many clients, and they can't, they see it, but they don't want to own it because they know they can't, live up to it, because they know that if they have to make a decision to change the direction of the company, it would create a disrespectful outcome to people. So it's even though it sounds simple, it's huge. And I call it the star of respect. So you start respecting yourself. If you respect yourself, you respect others. And then it just goes and it multiplies within an organization. And personnel know it, but they know if they're respected. And it's not something you mandate. It's just something you live.
What are the steps for someone to start respecting themselves if they previously haven't respected themselves?
Well, first of all, I don't think you could work with somebody if they don't respect themselves. I think it'd be obvious if they're, not, they're telling you what they want you to do, but they're not living what they're saying. And we see that in the corporate world where the executive team, has privileges, but nobody else underneath that has the privileges. So you can see automatically that there's a divide, especially in public companies. And it's really comes from the top. So it's really the top needs to be aware of all people feeding the top. And the respect would be they can't say they're respecting themselves. It's evidence through people observing, So, and a lot of employees don't realize that in startup companies and mid-sized companies that most owners, will pay their staff first before they pay themselves and may not pay themselves, but they will make sure they're employees. Now that would be respect, but nobody would know that because they wouldn't divulge it. They can't say, well, I'm not paying myself, but I'm going to make sure you have sorry about that. You have I want to make sure you're going to be okay. At the fact that I'm responsible for this. I'm responsible to pay you. And I've actually witnessed that many times.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. So you've spent 7 years in hospitality at this point, this juncture in your story, and learned a lot, as you mentioned. But what happened after that? What was the next step, and how did you know it was time to move on, or what transpired to lead you to the next phase of your life?
Well, I had 4 children in 5 years. And so I became a stay-at-home mom. And I left on a high. I left on a high from my job. And it was sad but I had to, I had other responsibilities. So when I wanted to break back in, it was Jan Hu. Like, people have short memories. And I learned very quickly that, you left on a high, but that was in that moment in time. So, when you're staying at home, you think, oh yeah, they'll remember me. I'll come back in. I'll, start where I left off. Never happens. And so you have to start from zero. And so I had to reinvent myself.
This episode is brought to you by Bloom Benefits Group. Bloom Benefits is disrupting employee benefits by rethinking the status quo. They provide exceptional customer service while saving you money. Bloom offers group benefits and retirement products, health and wellness accounts, executive benefits, life insurance, and disability and critical illness. Available to companies across Canada, Bloom helps clients save money without interrupting current plans. Check them out at bluebenefits.ca.
Young professionals, families, and entrepreneurs. What makes Zelos Investment Counsel different? Our independence, client focus, and access. Zelos Investment Counsel is independent from banks and brokerages, which ensures clients' best interests are served without corporate conflicts. We are fiduciary portfolio managers with a duty to clients that doesn't exist in the brokerage model. At Zelos Investment Counsel, we exist to care for our clients, and every day we strive to help our clients reach their goals. We provide our clients with access to institutional investment managers and sector specialists through our proprietary investment structure. For more information, book your no obligation meeting today at zelosglobal.com. That's www.zelosglobal.com.
Attention all car owners. Is the winter weather turning your beloved ride into a rusty relic? Fear not, because we've got the solution you've been dreaming of: Crown Rust Protection. Picture this: your car defying the elements, standing strong against rust like a knight in shining armor. Crown Rust Protection is not just a shield, it's an investment in the longevity and resale value of your vehicle. Don't let rust take the wheel. Book your Crown Rust Protection treatment today and let your car embrace its inner superhero. Call now at 403-291-1951 or book your appointment at www.krown.com. Our skilled technicians are ready to give your car the VIP treatment it deserves. Crown Rust Protection, because your car deserves to age like fine wine, not rusty vinegar.
Today's episode is brought to you by Motive, a leading venture builder with over a decade of experience helping corporates and startups build, launch, and scale successful business ventures. Whether you're looking to innovate your business model, develop a game-changing product, or craft a winning go-to-market strategy, Motive is with you every step of the way. Their proven venture building process and technologies help reduce risks and accelerate time to market. Innovation is everywhere. Let's harness it together. Visit motive.digital to learn more. That's Motive spelled M-O-T-I-V.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's something that you talk about with your clients these days as it relates to just needing to be out there and relevant and just like in the community, if you will, because as you mentioned, people have those short memories, right?
Yeah. They don't mean to. It's just life. They're moving in one direction, you're moving in another. But it's very apparent for many, many people. Like if they leave a job and they had a great opportunity in a job, and if they're not visible, people don't remember them, and they don't have a network, and right away they're in peril because they haven't nurtured the network. You have to nurture the network.
Yeah. So just to provide some perspective, when you were raising your kids and stay at home, like how long, how many years were you in that the most important job, mind you, in the world?
Yeah. So it was about 10 years that I was doing jobs off the side of my desk for neighbors and things like that, helping them, but nothing concrete. And then my marriage dissolved, and of course I didn't have a network. I didn't have Plan B. I literally had to figure things out, and I left a very affluent lifestyle, and I I don't know where I get the courage, but I figured, oh well, I can figure this out, and so that's when I left, and I had to reinvent myself, and that's how I started the business that I'm still in, and had to find a way to support my children because I left with no financial means, which I wouldn't recommend anyone do. But I was married to a lawyer, and it wasn't as easy as you would think to try to negotiate. Especially when you don't understand you didn't know who to go to have representation to support you because he was so prominent. Nobody wanted to defend or go up against him. So it was an awkward, unpleasant situation. So I had to figure something out. And so how I started in this was this is pre-internet. I went to the library, and I thought, I wonder, which is the least entrepreneurial city in Canada? And I chose Ottawa. So I went to the library and I took the phone book out, the Ottawa phone book, and I looked up 100 companies. And I was doing market research to see if I was on the right track. And I wrote them a handwritten letter saying I would be in Ottawa at the Reinvention Club for 3 days in September. And I would be serving breakfast, lunch, and dinner because I didn't want them to say no, that they couldn't meet with me. And I just said, if you had any questions or challenges within your business that you didn't have answers to, I would do my best to support them. And if I didn't if I couldn't give them an answer, I would have an answer in 24 hours. So I sent these letters out, and no RSP. I just figured, well, if they're going to come, they're going to come. Anyway, 3 days, 50 came. And all the questions, I figured they'd be Harvard type questions, financial modeling or something like that. And they were basic questions, mostly HR, mostly people centered. And out of 50, 10 signed a 1-year contract to work with me. And I was so nervous that I'd get paid because I'm living in Calgary. I had them bring their corporate checkbooks and write out 10, 12 post-dated checks to work with me. And the rest is history.
Wow. So that was like very interesting. I believe, like, just like from my perspective, just hearing that recount of that story, because inevitably there's always this push and pull, like as in business, as in life, where you have some certainty in terms of like you have like a plan, a game plan, and you commit to it, but you don't necessarily control the outcome. Like you could have been sitting there at the club with no people showing up, right? And already had paid for the accommodations and the flight out there and all the things.
Yeah. So I took, but I had to go outside of here because I knew people knew me. But, the irony was, well, first of all, those 10 introduced me to 10. I had 20 clients in 3 months. And then I worked in Ottawa for 2 years. But when I came back to Calgary, and I was just flying there one week a month. When I came back to Calgary, people thought I was from Ottawa. And I tried to explain to them, but it got so complicated. I went with the flow. And this is how people are. They think someone coming from somewhere else is smarter than they are. And I thought, that's so weird, because I'm the same person that lived here, but because I came from somewhere else, they figure I had more wisdom. Now I did, because I was working with 20 different people, but I found that really interesting. So I just went with the flow, and people would introduce me. Oh, Jan just moved here from Ottawa. And it's too complicated to try to explain that. No, I actually live here, but I'm working in Ottawa. So anyway, I went with the flow, and it's been an incredible journey and a phenomenal journey that I've been on, and working with over 1,000 people. It's like beyond my imaginings.
Yeah. So maybe that's a good opportunity, because like I'm sure, how you started and what you do now, and everything has kind of evolved and changed over the course of time, because how many years, how many years did you say that you've been in business now?
30.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Amazing. So maybe it's a great opportunity to highlight like the business and what your offering is, and who you work with.
Okay. Well, I specialize in developing an executive mindset. So what I find from my experience is that we give titles to people and we assume they know what they're doing. And I see their weakness. And of course, they don't know who to share their weakness with. So I've been very supportive of coming in and, giving them, what are their strengths and where do they need to improve in order to be an executive. It's not that simple. It's a huge responsibility. So they are vulnerable because we just, kind of like put labels on people and we don't really know what their capabilities are. So that's one area that I really done well in from a general, CEOs, COOs. So I develop also people who want to become those. So if their goal is to be a COO, I bring them along. And then I've been very fortunate to get them work. I'm not a recruiter, but I have a network and people trust me. So I've been able to get them hired and then work with them to actually, succeed in the role. So not just leave them there, but actually help them design the path of the executive mindset. And then I found with the CEOs that I worked with over the years that their weakness was financial acumen. and they would hire a CFO, and they would see a person with the title CFO and assume that person knew what they're doing. And unbeknownst to them, the person didn't know what they were doing and got them into financial peril. So I got fascinated with the mindset of CFOs, and I started studying CFOs, and then started to really focus on looking at the difference and educating CEOs on, what are you looking for? What type of CFO are you looking for? There's actually two types. There's an accounting type and there's a strategic type. So not to make anyone right or wrong, but depending on what the CEO required, most of them want the strategy. They want someone to think strategically and not just be a bean counter. But they're all doing good jobs. It's just, what are we trying to achieve? And then through the companies I worked with, I designed a sales development program called Competitive Visibility to help them to really understand, especially technical salespeople, mostly engineers, because they're so linear in their abilities and they're not as creative with how to find new business. I kind of leaned into that area. And then as time has gone on, because things have changed, I've found so many very successful people reach a ceiling in their careers. So a doctor, a dentist, lawyers, even executives, where they just can't do the job anymore. They're done, but they don't know what else to do. So they hire me. We do career reinvention, and we put them on a different path, and it has to be a revenue generating path for them to exchange their value to a community. So I've had great success with that. And then in many cases, I get them clients. I open doors for them because they don't know how to prospect. They don't know how to be visible to an audience. And then that's how I created Conversations That Matter, which is a platform to premier clients that are ready to present what path they're going to engage in.
Amazing. Yeah.
So I filled the room. So I filled the room with prospects for them.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting to me as it relates to the model, because certainly, you have these offerings and then you get compensated for one aspect, but then there is so much value add that is provided over and above that you don't necessarily get directly compensated for, right? So
no. It would be very complicated to add that in. Everyone says, well, you should add it in. Well, it's not going to happen with everybody. So, and then they'll hire for that.
Yes.
Hire me for that. And I may not be able to produce it. So it's, I think that's the value of generosity again. I do believe what you give out unconditionally comes back. And I'm living proof of that. And, because I'm not transactional, I can't look at a person as a transaction because it won't work.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's amazing. I mean, you have been doing this for a long time. You have grown and built such an amazing community and network. And effectively, 30 years ago, you were starting from zero in the sense that, everyone had forgotten about you, that in your previous career, and you had to go to Ottawa to start your business. So it's just amazing to see how things have transpired, and you've been able to grow this business and build this brand that everyone that does know you appreciates and loves, right? So congratulations.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's every day is a new day. It's like every business, nothing is forever. So you have to be strategic. You have to know what you're doing, and also be visible. I don't think people realize how important visibility is, and it's not going to networking events. It's way more strategic than that, and I think that's my strength, is that I'm constantly looking, for the dots that I need to connect, and it's a journey. And with no agenda. This is the other thing. You have to do it with no agenda, because the person you're meeting, a new person, will sense that there's an agenda. I know that sounds, counterintuitive somehow, but it's more, why am I pursuing this person is to open doors for them and make their life easier through my network. And then it comes back to me.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's one of those things where I feel like people that are really great at attracting amazing people get that intuitively as it relates to like not having an agenda and just trying to add as much value as possible. Because to your point, it's tough to quantify, but people do have this like subconscious layer where they can detect certain things like hidden agendas and things like that, right?
Yeah, and it's a listening position. Like a lot of people just talk too much and they're not listening. They're not curious about the other person. And so there's just new ways we have to look at ourselves. And it's hard. If you're not curious by nature, you can't all of a sudden be curious. It's not as simple as it sounds. You couldn't take a course on being curious because it wouldn't integrate. You genuinely have to open up your heart and be in the right sector of people too. The other thing is people just wander. They just wander, but they haven't really defined who is the ideal contact they want to meet with. Some are afraid to write it down because it might be beyond them and they don't even imagine how that person would respond to them. But it really starts with, hey, who do I want to meet? Who's important for me to have in my network? And being very deliberate about that. And I think if we started to teach people, they have way more successful experiences on all layers, all levels, because they've designed their path of who they want to meet.
Yeah.
And be generous with them, like really generous. People say, what can I do for you? And you tell them and they tune out, say, how can I help you? And then you tell them and then they tune out. It's almost like it's a speech they're giving because they think that's what they're supposed to say when they meet somebody.
It's that kind of like autopilot small talk.
Yeah.
Like naturally people will say like, how are you doing? And people have this kind of canned answer that they're not really consciously thinking about, right? So
yeah. And I think part of my success is I'm so outcome driven. I'm when I work with someone, if I can't find an outcome for them, I can't work with them. Like I won't mislead anyone, but outcome driven is I'm very intuitive. I can see the outcome. I can see where we're going. The person doesn't need to see it at that moment, but I know I'm guiding them because I know their value. They're learning their value, but I'm seeing their value they already have, because sometimes people don't see their value.
Yeah.
They only see the job, they only see their degrees, but they don't see their value. And it's an interesting way to look at a person.
Yeah, 100%. I think like a few themes as it relates to some of your offerings are really, there's like some tailwinds there in terms of how the economy and everything has shifted. One, interestingly enough, like I believe the role of a CFO has become more complex. They have a lot of pillars that are reporting up to them now as it relates to strategy, HR, technology, all the things that there's more demanded of that level of executive. So that's something that individuals will have to become so much more well-rounded in order to properly fit the mold for most positions that have that title, right?
Yeah. And you can always hire a senior accountant. You don't need to be in the weeds, but you have to be the financial scout on the hill. If you're not the financial scout on the hill, we're in trouble, because they have to see what's coming at the company that will impact the wealth. Plus, like I'm a fanatic about sales, Like, most companies have sales in the basement. And I say, no, without revenue, nothing matters. But they don't look at sales that way. So I think there has to be alignment with finance and sales, because without, respecting sales and helping sales, there is no sales.
Yeah. There's no business.
There's no business. And I don't know, in all the years I've been doing this, and, I just learned something the other day, and this person was a new CEO, and he thought estimating was sales, and that marketing was sales. And I went, how does this happen? Sales is sales. Like, without revenue, nothing matters. So who's in charge of the money from the revenue side? And I think sometimes companies forget. They think leadership, I'm the best CEO, I'm doing all the right things, but they don't understand they're not getting paid if there's no money coming in the door in one way or another. So we haven't really learned about business the way it really is. We've kind of done everything around the basics that work, and it's respecting sales. And we think anybody can sell. No, it is an art. Sales is an art.
100%.
Yeah. And we don't give it enough credit.
Oh, 100%. I think to your point, like, sales is equal to revenue, and revenue is like your business, right? That's like the top line of the funnel before all the other expenses get deducted, right? So,
yeah.
I guess another area I find very fascinating and relevant is this career reimagination.
Yeah.
Like, there's the economy is changing. It's hard. Things like inflation, things are expensive, and inevitably, businesses are looking to control costs as a result. And a lot of senior professionals may find themselves on the sidelines due to consolidation and downsizing and that sort of stuff. And the opportunities that they once were used to are not there anymore. So it's really figuring out how to repurpose their skill set in a new environment. So I think that's extremely relevant, and I'm not sure if you want to talk about a few comments around that area.
Yeah, well, one of the things is, people are caught in, if you're an engineer, I'll use a petroleum engineer. Okay, so think of a petroleum engineer, and they've been dedicated to making an oil company wealthier. And then all of a sudden they don't have a job. Where do they go? How do they reinvent themselves? Because they've been a robotic in their role, and now they have to go out and build a network, and they have to, find a new path. So I love the challenge. Because what I find is the minute we can start to find out who they really are, and we build on that basic identity of what if, but also I believe what is missing for most people is confidence. And I know they're confident in this, but there's layers of confidence. And I see people graduating with confidence. As they start to gain confidence that they are worthy for something else, then we can move into a path that aligns with who they really are and build on that. And in fact, I have Dr. Robbie Birdie coming in February, and he's flying in from Vancouver, and he's an ER doctor. So he hired me because it's not sustainable to be an ER doctor in your 50s and 60s because of the shift work, and plus of the trauma. They have 11,000 patients a month come through their ER with only 10 doctors. So he's already seeing, this isn't sustainable. What am I going to do? So we're creating a podcast for him. Well, he's going to spend another 10 years probably in this role and build this other side of him, and building a bridge from the ER to the general public. Now, from our research, no one's done that yet. But what he wants to do is educate people on what's going on behind the curtain. what's really happening with the health systems and so forth, to make them feel, there's other ways that they can take care of themselves without just running to the ER. So he's going to be launching the podcast here. So when I first met him, I had no idea what are we going to do? Where's the secret sauce for this particular person? Because he has only one other choice. He specializes, and that's another 7 years before he can become something else. And he didn't want to do that. So we don't know what the outcome will be with what we're trying to do, but it's morphed into other things now. I don't want to share them without his approval, but the fact that he's got a different view of an opportunity that he never realized was possible before. So that's how I see we have to get started on something that leads to something else. But if we don't get started, you're in trouble, because you're gonna get depressed, you're gonna give up, you're gonna have no self-confidence, and then it's harder to lift somebody up when they're in despair.
Yeah, 100%. Jan, what type of impact do you want to have? What do you want your legacy to be about?
I thought about that. I haven't really. Well, I've thought about it, but I haven't really. I think I've made such an impact to date. I think if I were to leave recipes for people to follow, that if they follow this, not that I know everything, but I know what works to get from A to B. I think if I, started writing and capturing the methodologies of, taking people on a journey that they can count on if they followed, the elements of, so they're not coming in cold and trying to reinvent them. If I know there's a path of how to get there, then I think that would be a great legacy.
Mm-hmm. Knowing what you know now, perhaps advising a younger Jan that's at the Calgary airport on their way to Ottawa in trying to build the business for the first time, what advice would you give her?
Believe in yourself. You have to believe in yourself. You have to trust that you're smart, you're capable, and that it worked for me. But if it didn't, I'd have to pivot. So it's not just one line. It's not a straight line. For me, I think it was timing. I think I was graciously bold. So, but I didn't have any expectation. Like, I was just testing the market. And we need to test the market on ideas. And a lot of startups don't do that. They just run out the front door, think anybody's going to buy their product without doing market research. They haven't really helped. They haven't really got a substance of understanding that there is a buyer, that there is a person needing their service. They just assume that somebody will. And I think that's number one, is we have to know there is an end user, and that the end user can see the value for themselves and add value back to building whatever somebody's trying to build.
Yeah. What's something that was really challenging for you to deal with that had resulted in something unexpected, a learning or something positive that at the time it seemed like it was terrible, but in hindsight, it was actually the path?
I think I'm going to reverse that. I'm going to reverse it to where I thought something was valuable and it ended up being a disaster. I tried to grow my brand with other people to have leverage of services, and the people that I brought forth were great at what they did, but they never went out, and they had no network, and they never brought business in, and they depended on me to feed them. And that was a disaster for me, because I thought, I trusted people were like me, and they were, had a network, and they had contacts and everything else. And no, No, they didn't. And so finally I got exhausted from bringing in the business and giving it away to everybody. And so that shut down. And so that was a learning.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you said, the path with business, it's not a straight line. It's actually full of potholes and detours and all the things, right? So
Yeah. Unexpected things.
yeah.
You know, I think COVID was another one. Like COVID, I think it disrupted everyone. Like it came out of nowhere and people weren't prepared. Um, and people were immobilized. They didn't want to think ahead. They were immobilized in fear at the beginning. So they eventually grew out of it. But I think it held up a lot. I think it stopped a lot of progress.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
Well, Jan,
uncertainty.
Jan, I really enjoyed this conversation, and I'm sure our listeners will as well. But just wanted to take the opportunity to hand you the floor and just tell our listeners how they can connect with you, how they could learn more. The floor is yours. Anything that you want to highlight, feel free to.
Okay. Well, I guess I could reach out to my email. I'm an email person. I do all my work through email. So if they reached out at jan@janeden.com, that would be the easiest way. And and just to, maybe, want to have coffee with me because of all the people that I know. You never know how I can connect the dots for them, and also attend my 2 events. When executives come to town, I hear about it. I have an event to celebrate them called the New Calgarian Lunch or Dinner event. And then the conversations that matter are pretty, wonderful in the sense that the person coming out has grown from being disrupted, not seeing a path forward, and all of a sudden they've got a new path and they're so proud to share it. So attending one or both of those events would be worthy for someone.
Amazing. Well, appreciate this time. And, congratulations. 30 years is a massive milestone. And, we've all seen the statistics as it relates to businesses surviving the first year, 5 years, let alone 30 years. It's a real amazing accomplishment, and wishing you so much, success and joy and luck for many, many, many more years.
Well, thank you so much, Gilbert. I really appreciate this. Yes, I've been watching you. I haven't listened to any of the podcasts, but I will now. But what a great idea you've got here, interviewing people. I think it's wonderful.
Yeah, I think similar to yourself, there's different avenues for it, but really having that platform for storytelling is important, right?
Yeah. Oh, 1,000,000%. Yeah. I think it's wonderful. Yeah. Well, great. And I look forward to seeing you again soon.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sure we'll be in touch. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you again for joining us for another episode of Between Two Dots by Intention Media. This podcast is co-hosted by myself, Gilbert Bong, and Hafiz Mita. If you enjoyed this podcast, please rate and review wherever you listen.